Hey everyone, how's it going? Hope you're doing good. I'm doing great as always. In today's video, I'm super excited to share with you guys a new camera that Fujifilm just came out with. It is the FujiFilm GFX100s. My friends at Fujifilm were nice enough to send me this camera to test and check out and see what it's like to shoot with. So I've actually broken up my video now into two parts. The first part, which is the part you're watching now, will be how I use the camera in a studio setting. And then part two will be how I use the camera out in the street. One reason I'm actually really interested in this camera is because I want to get into more studio photography. It's one part of my photography that I feel is lacking. And this is exactly the kind of camera that I would love to have for when shooting in studios. It basically does everything the current camera I have right now, my D5, is lacking in what I feel with my current work. So I really wanted to see what I could do with this camera in studio. So that's what this part of my video was about. And then part two will be me out in the street shooting with one of my friends, B-Boy Jun. So now, first things about this camera. I'm sure you all have checked it out and seen it, but let's just go over some of the main features about this camera. The biggest thing about this camera is that it has a 102 megapixel sensor located in this tiny compact body. To give some sort of reference, my Nikon D5 has about a 25 megapixel, I think. I can't remember. It's been like 6 years since I've been using it. So basically with the 102 megapixels, this makes this camera's sensor 4 times as large basically as my Nikon D5, which is crazy. It's a huge sensor, massive sensor, but the body is actually, I think, smaller than my D5, which is quite amazing. It doesn't have the bottom grip like my D5 has, so that would be something extra. So that kind of kills a bit of the size there as well. But the thickness as well, it's pretty small, pretty compact, and it's only 900 grams, so it's actually quite light for what you're getting. You know, it's a very easy to hold camera. I'm quite impressed with the build just right off the bat. Fujifilm cameras are always very sturdy and quite ergonomic, and you know, I really like this handle when shooting with it. I really enjoyed holding it. I never really got tired or anything like that. And just the full ergonomics of the camera are really cool and make it really simple to use. Now it says that it has 102 million effective pixels, which I personally am not sure exactly what that means. But you know, again, it's a big sensor, it's huge. That's really all you need to know. I'm not really, again, a technical photographer as far as numbers and all that kind of stuff, but I know it's much bigger than what I've been used to. And it creates files that are much larger than what I normally do. For example, with my D5, a raw file would be about 25 or 26 megabytes. Convert that over into JPEG, and depending on the photo, I get about 8 to 10 megabytes per photo. This camera, just looking at it quickly, I will get anywhere from 200 megabytes for a raw file and 25 megabytes for the JPEG. So that's crazy. The JPEGs are the same size as the raw files for my D5. So that's pretty insane, pretty large files that you're dealing with this camera. But really, like, you know, all those numbers don't mean much if it's not very fun to use, if it's not very easy to use. So what I did was, you know, like I said, one thing I want to do more is studio photography. So I rented a studio through Agai Trading, who are some people that I work with here a lot in Tokyo. And I invited my friends, B-Girl Ami and B-Girl Ayu, who you might have seen in one of my other videos where I tested the Fujifilm F1 50mm lens. And they came down and we had a fun session down at the studio. Now, I'm not a studio photographer, so I'm not going to go basically, like, you know, I'm not going to go into all the how I did the lighting and everything like that. Just going to give you guys a quick look at our session, and then when we come back, I'll look through the files that we got and show you just kind of how crazy the photos are that we got out of the session. Cheers. Perfect. Huh. yeah, so that was our session. I had a really good time in the studio, really easy to work there, nice big studio. If you're interested in how I shoot with strobes in the studio, maybe I'll do another video on that next month or something like that. But for now, I just want to talk about the camera, because this is the star of the show. What was going on while we were shooting? Well, to be honest, like I said, I'm not a studio photographer. So when I showed up to the studio, I was a little bit nervous. Camera that I hadn't really used much, and I got 2 models, and I've rented the place, and so there's a bit of time concerns and things like that. So I was a little bit rushed at the start, and there's a couple of things that I kind of goobered on when I was setting up the camera to start off with that kind of made things a little bit difficult for me. So just to start off with my mistakes of the shoot, one thing was that this camera obviously has an EV viewfinder, electronic viewfinder, and the default setting was to show what I look through the viewfinder shows what I would see with the settings on the camera as they are. Now, as a D5 shooter, as a Nikon shooter, it's not it's an optical viewfinder. So basically, I just see what I see, and then no matter what the settings are, I don't see that, and then I shoot, and that's the image I get as the settings are set. But with these viewfinders, you actually see what the photo would look like before you take it with the settings you have. So now, when you're in a studio and you're shooting with strobes, and because I had the Broncolor transmitter specifically made for Fujifilm cameras, I was able to shoot in high-speed sync. So I had my shutter speed. Let's see if I can see what it was at first. So I was at like 640 or so for a shutter speed, which normal cameras can't get up that high, but with the high sync at that, I had it on there. But what that also did was it killed all the natural light of all the light that was in the studio that's not my strobes. So when I was looking through the viewfinder, I couldn't see anything. And I was really kind of confused and perturbed. And at first I didn't know what to do. So I just kind of shot that way the first couple times and checked the images. And it was amazing because the autofocus was actually picking up the girls' faces, even though I couldn't see anything. So I knew basically where they were and I could shoot. But that only lasted so long and I couldn't do it forever. So I went in and to the menus and I tried to figure out how to fix it. And the cool thing is with this camera and with Fujifilm in general, they have really nice intuitive menus. So I was able to jump into the menu, and even though I'm not a Fujifilm shooter, not really familiar with it in the first place, but I was able to find where to shut off that function of the EV, of the electronic viewfinder, and just turn it back so it just shows me basically what an optical viewfinder would be. And that only took like maybe a minute or two of playing with the camera. And I was to fix that and then move on. It's a new camera, I've never really used it, and there were some settings that I maybe should have checked and fixed before even going to the studio, but there I was able to fix it on the fly, which is really nice, and it shows how intuitive and how easy the menu system is on these cameras, which is a big thing when you're first starting out, because it's a bit of a hurdle to dig through a menu for like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, especially when you got time on the clock and you got 2 people waiting to get their photo taken. So I didn't want to waste too much time, and I didn't, so that was great. Another thing I made a mistake on is this camera actually has a burst mode here, where you can get 5 frames per second in continuous autofocus, I think. And the thing is, this camera's shutter is really quiet. Like compared to my D5, it's really quiet. And when you have this drive on, shooting 5 frames per second, the first couple frames are really quick. So, if I was shooting my D5 and I shot in continuous burst mode or something like that, I would hear each individual like clank, clank, clank of the shutter. And I would understand, oh, I'm shooting a burst, I don't need to do that right now, so I'll shut it off. With this camera, I wasn't used to how quiet the shutter is, which is good. My D5 is so loud. The shutter is so quiet, and I had the drive on at first, so I was shooting a quick burst of 2 images every time. And when you're shooting 102 megapixel camera, shooting RAW and JPEG, to a card that I'll admit is not the best card in the world, it's a terrible card to be using with this camera, but it's all I had, things slow down real quick. And I was wondering, like, why am I getting like a well exposed shot and then a dark shot every time I'm shooting? Like, I don't know. I think I'm just taking 1 photo, but the camera's showing me 2 photos. And after a longer than I would like to admit, I figured out that, okay, now I have to shut off the drive and put it a single shot. But it goes to show you, and like another good point about this is how quiet the shutter is. I couldn't even tell it was taking 2 images when I thought it was only taking 1. It's my fault. I should have double checked that I had shut off the drive and put it on a single. The shutter is so quiet that I couldn't even tell I was taking 2 photos when I only wanted to take 1. So that's pretty amazing. I thought that was really cool. And then once I put it back to single shot and we were good to go, the rest of the shoot went amazing. Like, so yeah, the camera itself was super easy to use. I had the Broncolor transmitter, which allowed me to shoot high-speed sync, like I said. So the strobes worked every time. This and the transmitter worked amazingly well together, even though this is a brand new camera. So I was really excited about that. When I was shooting the portraits, I basically kept the camera in continuous focus mode because that gave me face detection. And like, you know, reading up on a few blogs and that kind of thing, it seems like the face detection and the autofocus might not be as fast as, say, like a Sony or one of the high-end Canons and things like that. But for what I was doing in the studio, it was fine. Like, it really worked basically 99% of the time. I think the one time the autofocus was struggling a bit was one of the girls had, Ayu had a hat on, and she had it a little bit low, so it was kind of covering her face a bit. And the autofocus seemed to be confused for a little bit of a second there, but it's easily fixable. Just get her to bring up her chin, get some light on her face, and it was good to go. I was really happy with that because I'm quite quick moving and I don't use a tripod. And the continuous autofocus face detection on the camera works surprisingly well, especially for a medium format camera. So that was I was really happy with that. It's pretty cool. And yeah, you know, I already mentioned that I used basically a potato memory card when I was shooting this. So one thing you'll want to know is, yeah, you want to get the best card possible, especially if you're a high-speed shooter like myself, who I take a lot of images. Using the burst mode or taking like a lot of images, like I never had the camera stop, you know, saying like you've taken too many images, the buffer's full. Even with this potato card, I was able to keep shooting the whole time. But a couple times where I wanted to check the images, I noticed on the back here there's this button that says it's processing, and it took a little bit longer than I would have preferred. Now, 100%, it's the garbage card I had in the camera. It's just a small card I used for my GoPro and stuff like that. And I think if you had a better card, high-speed card, it wouldn't be a problem. And especially, you know, you gotta remember, I was shooting RAW to JPEG, because currently you can't edit the RAWs on Photoshop and that. It's just, that hasn't come out yet. So I was shooting on JPEG, which I almost normally never do. But I want to have the RAWs as well for when I can use them, I can edit on the RAWs and check it out how good they are. So basically, you know, I'm saving 100 megabytes or 200 megabytes per image, I think, and per RAW, and then 25 megs or so per JPEG. So, you know, you shoot 10 images, that's like what, like 1,000 megabytes, like a gig or whatever, going onto that card real quick. So that's a lot of information going on this card. So you really want to get the best card you can. You know, it's no fault of the camera at all that I was having trouble with that. It's just the garbage card I was using. And I think if I had a better card, it would have worked much better. Camera was amazing. I really had no issues other than my own fault with the settings at the start, like I said. But really, you know, once we got shooting and once we got going, I found the camera really easy to use. The controls are simple. This little screen here is very easy to see. All the numbers are huge, so it's really easy to see exactly your settings in that once you have actually figured them out and calmed down and enjoying your shoot. Yeah, so that was super easy to do. Let's take a quick look at some of the images. You know, you saw what I was shooting there, but you know, I have the images here up in my in Bridge, which is what I like to use. So, you know, like going through, what the amazing thing with this camera now is, yes, it's autofocus is great and all that kind of stuff. But one thing it does way more than, say, my own camera is, you know, once you get into these and you look at these images at 100%, this is crazy. Like, I'm serious. Like, I'm shooting portraits. I've been a photographer for, geez, since I was like 15, I've been in photography. I've really never seen 100 megapixel images. And looking at something like this at 100%, it's just crazy. Like, it's so much detail. Like, unfortunately, for some people, it might be too much detail in the face and that. There's, I don't think I'd want to be photographed with this camera quite at this moment with this nice light. But it's just so amazing how much detail you get on these shots. And like looking at something even where, you know, this full body shot here of, now this is Ami and this is Ayu, so we'll come into Ami here. Like, this is 100%. I could super easily crop that and it still looks amazing. So, you know, actually let's like, I really like this image. Like, this is an amazing image. I like the pink on the back, and we come in here and jump in on the face, and it's 100% and it's so clean and so crisp. The autofocus is bang on here. It's really quite amazing. And now let's just quickly open this up in Photoshop. So now I've had this open in Photoshop, you know, bring it up. And let's just zoom in on this thing. So we're at 16%, 46%, 91%. Look at this thing. almost 200%. You know, I can see the individual spots, like what they say in Japanese, kiana, the individual like little spots for hair in that. We come into the eye more. You get these individual eyelashes and stuff. I'm at almost 400% right now, and it's super crisp and clean. This is pretty crazy. So, you know, like if you want to do skin touch-ups, little skin touch-ups here and there, it's, I think this would be really good for that kind of thing. You got so much detail in the camera. You can easily clean this up at such a close, clean level. And, you know, I could even, with an image like this, I could easily go through and, you know, we want to make it vertical. Okay, sure, that's cool. Vertical for a story, say. I don't know. You know, this isn't for Instagram, but still, you know, we got a cool image, you want to put it out there, so I can crop this much. Now, I'd really just want to bring it in tight on her face, maybe. I don't know. You never know what you're going to need the images for, so I could bring it in tight on her face here. Crop that, bring it up. Still looks amazing. We're still not even at 30%, which is crazy. This is so crazy. I haven't really tested this yet, but just doing it now, this is so insane. So I can come in here, but this is still crazy. Like, this is still a perfectly, amazingly good image, even just this close in there. And let's crop it even more, just because I'm crazy. So yeah, like I could get this image, yeah, and like this looks amazing. Like this still looks like an amazing photo, even though we're cropped in so much. Like you saw the image at the beginning. It's like, let's see, pop here. Going from this to this, and it's still looking amazing. Like that's crazy. I'm really, really impressed with this sensor. Like I've never shot on a 102 megapixel camera, but this is amazing. Like it's really cool. Like imagine how you could crop for days with this thing. So like, you know, maybe I'm out at an event and I don't have a super huge lens, like surfing. Maybe I don't have an 800 millimeter lens. Maybe I only have a 300 millimeter lens, but I could crop so much and make it still look so good that I don't need an 800 millimeter lens anymore. Like it changes everything that you're doing there. It's so crazy. And you know, a lot of times when you're shooting portraits, you might be shooting a full body portrait like I have here, but your client actually really likes that image, but they want to use it just a close up of the face. Normally, you know, you get a bit of distortion, and if you don't have like a crazy camera like this, it really wouldn't look ideal, but like really, that looks amazing. Like that really looks amazing. I'm really quite excited and surprised about that. Yeah, like I said, you could crop for days. So yeah, I think that's really one of the major selling points of this camera. It's so small, so compact, and yet it has a 102 megapixel sensor in it, which allows you to literally, like I just said, crop for days. It gives you so much area to work with. And of course, you know, shoot in camera as the best you can, but there's situations where you need to crop. Like I find I crop a lot, and you crop like this like crazy, and you still have an amazingly beautiful image that you could use anywhere. Like it's crazy. It's really, I'm really blown away by how good this looks. I really hadn't looked at it so much and so in close yet, but now looking at it now, it's nuts. It's really, really cool. But yeah, all in all, man, I think this camera is really nice. The price point, it's like 6,000 American, I think is what I saw, which is cheaper than the D6 at the moment, I think. The Nikon D6, it's right up on that level. And my D5 is old. It works, it does what it needs to do, it works. But I'm honestly really starting to consider the next camera I need to buy. And this camera is really in my radar, like honestly. You know, even this camera and say the new 80 1.7, I think it is, 80mm 1.7 G mount lens that they also announced. I think that's a thing. I'll have to double check. But any prime portrait lens, you know, if I had that and one lens even, that's like 70% of the work I do right now I could do with this, and it would look, I think, a lot better than what I'm doing and producing right now as images. So as a, you know, professional photographer, there's a point you get into your shooting where you're technically held back from your equipment, and you really do feel like you need something else. Like you need the better strobes, like the Broncolors. I needed those for the work I was doing. I needed the 105 1.4 Nikon prime lens that I use all the time now. I needed that level of quality in my images. And now with the clients I have and the work I'm doing, this is really tempting. Like it's really tempting. It's so nice to use. Ergonomics are great. The files are amazingly huge and awesome. So like when I shoot for, say, New Era, and the images that they're using are not just going to be on social media, but on posters, in catalogs, in store pop-ups. I want as many megapixels as I can behind those images to make them the best as possible. So yeah, I don't, if I do buy it, I'll let you guys know, but I'm really, really tempted and really, really interested in playing with this camera more, and especially with the new lens that's come out, and see what it does for me that I'm not getting in my current equipment. So yeah, thanks a lot. This has been a long one. I chatted a lot. I got really excited about this camera, I'm sure. And this is just part one. I also went out and into the street with my friend, like I said, B-Boy Jun, and we went to the Tokyo International Forum and did some outdoor natural light shooting with this camera. Performed great again. And yeah, awesome. Guys, if you like this video, leave a comment, subscribe, all that stuff everyone says. But it's really appreciated. I see my follower count go up a little bit each day, and it's always super happy to see that people are enjoying my content, and it gets me motivated to do more. So yeah, cheers, thanks a lot, and talk to you guys soon.